Hi there, dear friends of mystery. As you know, shadows operate in different ways. But are they in our favor or against? I'm Mr. S, and today I will tell you a story, but it is not
a fairy tale.
Alejandro, a passionate history teacher, was excited about his recent move to a charming old house on the outskirts of the city. The retailer had made him a good offer, which he considered reasonably cheap, since the house was worth its weight in gold. The house, with its Victorian-style structure and history-filled atmosphere, was just what Alejandro had been looking for. After years of teaching and studying the history of others, he was eager to immerse himself in his own. It was a good deal without a doubt. On the first day in his new home, Alexander met John, his neighbor, who helped him to unpack and settle. John was an affable, quiet man with a remarkable fondness for books. He could often be seen in his garden with a book in hand, enjoying reading while watering his flowers. The two men struck up a fast friendship, and every day met there in their yards to chat about literature and tell stories. In no time, John had become Alejandro's best friend. However, as the days passed, Alejandro began to experience strange occurrences in his house. Lights would flicker for no apparent reason. Doors he knew he had locked would appear open. And on several occasions he felt a cold, unsettling presence around him. At first, Alejandro tried to find logical explanations for these events, thinking they might be due to the age of the house. One night, while immersed in reading an ancient manuscript, Alejandro heard a noise coming from the attic. The sound was a faint rustling, followed by a thud armed with a flashlight. Alejandro decided to investigate. As he listened some footsteps over there, he climbed the stairs that creaked under his weight and opened the attic door. The place was covered in dust and littered with boxes and old furniture covered with sheets. It was obvious that no one had been there for a long while. As he explored, something caught his eye, an old broken mirror leaning against one of the walls. As he approached it, Alejandro felt a cold chill run down his back. It was then that he saw, reflected in the mirror, the figure of a young woman with an expression of despair on her face. Alejandro turned quickly, but the figure had disappeared. His heart was pounding, and immediately decided to get out of there, leaving the attic door wide open. From that moment on, the figure of the young woman started to appear in Alejandro's dreams, always in the reflection of a broken mirror. After days without being able of getting some rest, Alejandro decided to gather information about the history of the house and its former inhabitants. It was then that he discovered the tragic story of the family who had lived in the house many years ago and which had left after the mysteriously disappearance of their young daughter. According to the police report, the body of the young girl was never found, and with no clues in hand, the police resolved to close the case. As the days passed, the paranormal events just intensified. He was getting scared. He talked to Jan, who attentively listened to him. He was such a good friend. He asked Alejandro to stay calm, and that these things used to happen to special people, so he shouldn't be afraid of that. Alejandro told him that he felt like as if the daughter's soul of that family was trying to tell him something, but he was still unable to decipher. That night, while Alejandro was sleeping, he experienced a terrifying short nightmare. He found himself in the main hall of the house that he currently belonged. The walls were a little different, though. They looked rustier and darker. Suddenly, he heard some steps. No, they sounded more like somebody was running upstairs. The dream was that vivid that he could even heard the breath of that person running, desperate, the heart pumping. That person was running away. But why? In that moment, the door behind him was opened, and a horrifying shadow climbed the staircases hurriedly. That thing was running after the person upstairs. Alejandro needed to do something, but before his eyes, a sudden image appeared from nowhere. No, it was not an image. The phrase "found me in the attic," painted in blood, was repeatedly being showed before Alejandro's eyes. He couldn't move, and in reality, his body had wakened up as a defensive biological alert to the non-stop fear that he was experiencing. He stayed laid in his bed for a while with his eyes wide open. 10 seconds later, Alejandro started to recover consciousness. First his fingers, and then his whole body. He could finally move. Sweating and exhausted, that's when the nightmare ended. Alejandro slowly sat on the side of the bed to recover his breath, scrubbing his eyes. He couldn't believe what he had just dreamed. And when raising his head, there it was. The phrase written in the same bloody letters running down on the wall. Next day, feeling a little more relieved, Alejandro remembered the first time he witnessed the young girl reflection that now was tormenting him all day long. That was when he headed towards the attic once more. Being there, he attentively examined the mirror, where he saw that girl, now guided by curiosity instead of fear, but found nothing. Clueless, he placed the mirror to the original position and sat in front of it, bringing back the memory of the reflection he saw that day. That was when something came to his mind. That day, the girl's eyes were looking to a specific direction, pointing towards the wall. Alejandro inspected it thoroughly, but nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary, until, as he tapped on the wall, a particular sound caught his attention. He had discovered a hidden compartment there, an old box with a diary and an old photo in it laid secretly keep. The diary belonged to Isabella, and it described a horrifying truth in its last pages.
I'm Isabella, and today's night around 7:30. My parents have gone to the school's inauguration ceremony. This means I will have the house all for myself.
The diary started. 7:45, an update.
I'm trying my new camera. It's pretty cool. The photos appear printed instantly like magic. This suits me perfect. My friends will be very jealous tomorrow. When I show it to them,
Tick-tack, 9:15.
a person is dragging out of his house. She's dead. I forgot to turn off the flashlight, and he's coming after me now. I'm in the attic, but he will get here soon. For the person that finds this diary, please don't get close to John Peterson. He's a my neighbor, the good friend of my parents, is a Tell my mom and dad that I love them, please.
These were the last letters of the diary. No, unfortunately, these had been the last words of Isabella. Alongside the photo, clearly portrayed John dragging a woman out of his house. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. That night, after taking the photo, Isabella had tried to flee from that murder, hiding in the attic, where she wrote the last update. With no parents at home, and knowing the usual place of the hidden key of the family, John could easily enter. Isabella, finding herself lost, put the box with her diary and photograph in the hidden compartment that she only knew, keeping the proof away, and safe from that monster. Alejandro knew what he had to do, and he acted quickly. The police was called, and John was put into jail. Finally, Alejandro had succeeded in uncovering the truth and bringing justice for Isabella. The story did not end there, however. The news of John's arrest shocked the community. John was found guilty of Isabella's murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison. The day after the sentence, Alejandro confronted John. He couldn't believe that his good friend had done this. The friend with who used to share stories and good books while watering their plants was a murderer. John laughed at him, and he started.
You really believe that's a good friend? Don't even tell me that you considered those paranormal events, as you called them, as real. You are more I thought.
Getting closer to John, he confessed.
I was just playing with you. I knew how to enter that house. You know, seeing your face every time, when a light bulb suddenly turned on, or a door open was priceless. However, I give you that I was almost caught one day being in the attic. I knew that little girl had hidden something from me, that day that I had simply forgot, and came for it, but I didn't find anything. But you know what? The funniest part was having you helping me water the plants that grew from my victim in my yard.
Isabella never was the only victim. That neighborhood, in the front yard, under the front yard full of flowers that they used to water and meet to share some time, many laid hidden. This was enough for the court to sentence him to penalty. That night, while John was resting in the bed of his cold cell, he was awakened by an uneasy feeling. Peering through his bars, he caught a glimpse of a dark figure looming menacingly at him through the pitch-black darkness. John tried to scream, but his desperation was such that his lungs would not allow it. As he watched the strange figure slowly approach to him, he found himself being dragged by several disfigured hands wrapped around his body. John's screams echoed in that cell as he was led into the abyss. At least that's what he chose to believe. The next day, the authorities found John's cell empty with no trace of him. Who was this strange figure? And what happened to John? Since that incident, they remain a complete mystery. What we can be 100% sure of, however, is that the souls of Isabella and the other could finally rest in peace, and that Alejandro did not witness any paranormal events ever since. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Write if you felt identified with this story. And remember, next time you feel a chill in the night, it might be a whisper from the darkness. Until we meet again in the shadows, stay curious, stay safe, stay subscribed.
Goodbye.